Greetings and welcome to this episode of the First Class Church podcast. And I am overly excited. I am extremely elated to be here with the one and only Reverend Dr. Allison Henderson-Brooks. My name is Timothy Farmer. I'm so grateful that you are joining us for this broadcast brought to you by Farmer Tech Group. And we certainly hope that you will subscribe. If you're not a subscriber to the First Class Church broadcast, this podcast, we encourage you to do so whenever you have the opportunity. Actually, do it now. Do it now. But I am excited to be here with Reverend Dr. Allison Henderson-Brooks. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm so excited to be here. I think I'm more excited than you are.
I don't know. I told Justin, I think I'm nervous about this one because such greatness is in the room.
Listen, iron sharpens iron. So I too am equally as grateful to have been asked to join this incredible podcast because you're doing amazing work.
Well, bless you.
And
Likewise.
you've been doing amazing work. So
Likewise.
Thank you.
Hey, we go way back.
Way back.
Down
Way
like 4
back.
flat tires.
Listen, that's right. When none of us had gray hair.
And some of us when we had hair. So glad that you're here.
Grateful.
A little bit about Dr. Allison Henderson-Brooks. She is a 4th generation Baptist preacher. Baptist, I can tell you bleed Baptist if we cut you.
Baptist born, Baptist bred, and when I die, I'll be Baptist dead.
Oh my, come on now. I love it. Under the tutelage of Reverend Dr. Howard W. Creasy Sr. and has been preaching since the age of 15 years old. She is a graduate of Spelman College, my Spelman sister, and currently serves as the senior pastor of the Hill First Baptist Church in Athens, Georgia.
That's right.
And she is a woman of power, a woman of poise, a woman of prestige. But don't get it twisted. Don't let the heels and the suit fool you.
Don't let the cute face fool you.
She can flat foot preach, and we are so excited. And not only is she a great preacher, she's a great person, a great humanitarian, a person who has supported my ministry and who has done so for many others, particularly in her work that she does at Emory Candler School of Theology every day, supporting students. So again, welcome, Dr. Allison Henderson-Brooks.
Thank you, Dr. Timothy Farmer.
Indeed. So we'll get right into it.
Let's do it.
And because there's so many great things that I want to cover that I believe will be a blessing to so many people with the work that you do, all that you do in ministry. So speaking from the vantage point of being in ministry at an early age and serving from age 15, I'm sure even before preaching at 15, you were serving in the church like me. I tell people, my mother told me the story that she had some early labor pains with me while she was at choir rehearsal.
Wow.
So, I received it honestly, as I'm sure you did as well.
Absolutely.
So can you speak to how your ministry growing up has helped to prepare you and to keep you even in ministry now?
Yeah. So I come from a church-going family. 4th generation Baptist preacher. Grew up in Augusta, Georgia, at the historic Tabernacle Baptist Church. And my father used to recall the story that at 3 and 4, I would recite Dr. Charles Spencer Hamilton's sermons verbatim after church. And we moved from Augusta when I was in the 1st grade. And Dr. Hamilton told my parents when we were moving, y'all need to watch her. She might be a preacher. And we relocated to Mount Moriah with Dr. Creasy. And so I've been listening to good preaching my entire life. Usher, we served in the choir. My father was a deacon. My mother was an usher. My grandmother was one of the first women trustees at our church. And so my grandmother's saying was, you got 6 days to go every other place and stay. And so on Sunday, we going to stay in church. So we did 7:30 service, Sunday school, 10:30 service. And then we always had to go and feed somebody. If it was not the homeless shelter on Cascade, it was some sort of service. And if she was driving down Cascade and saw a church choir somewhere, We're going to go home and eat, and we're coming back. It was an all-day affair.
Sure.
And so, but the preaching piece of it, I'm Baptist. And so not seeing women in the pulpit. The first woman that I ever remember seeing in the pulpit was in Augusta, Dr. Essie McIntyre. She's the founding senior pastor of the Good Shepherd Baptist Church, a mega church. It is still a mega church. And it did not dawn on me until recently how seeing a woman's name on a pulpit, on a marquee about a church, would now be my reality. And so I thank God for how that's been dropped. But all of my pastors, I've had three, including Dr. Hamilton, they've always supported this call that God has had on my life. And so I certainly honor not just Dr. Hamilton, but Dr. Creasy, who started to teach me exegesis at 15. Who started to teach me you wear a white shirt and a black suit when you come to church and always be ready. Have a sermon in your back pocket, be ready to go. And those lessons are those that I still carry and those that I've been able to instill in the associate ministers that God has blessed us at the Hill First Church. And so the voice, the support, the love, and the preparation and the modeling of excellence is all I know when it comes to ministry.
Amen.
Yeah.
And so in that regard, as a pastor at Hill First and in your other pastoral or leadership capacities, what advice would you give to a pastor? I know this is year 2. You're three.
Yeah.
Wow.
Don't take me back.
No. This is year 3. So for those who are serving as pastors in their first 5 years in that role, what advice or what would you, from your experience, be able to share with those who are in those same shoes?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say maybe you have a 3-part question, a 3-part response. One, you got to get to know your people. You cannot cast vision and do transformative ministry if you don't know who's on your team. Conversely, you've got to know who's not on your team and work with them, but work around them. But you got to get to know the folks
and still love them at the same time.
And so, in my context, I went and had dinners at their homes. I spent the night at some of their homes when I was there on the weekend so that we could just chat and talk. I'm always the first person at church on Sunday. Nobody beats me to church but one deacon, and I can't help that because they wake up early. But I'm the second person at church every Sunday morning, and I'm always the last person to leave. So those types of small wins for new pastors as you get to know your congregation, they know that you're not just here to preach and go, but you're in it for the long haul. If there is a service, a maintenance happening at church, I just pop up if I'm scheduled or not, right? So one, getting to know the people. Second, understanding that change happens at the speed of trust.
Change is inevitable.
Change is inevitable, but it can only happen at the speed of trust, right? You've got to get some quick wins. They've got to be on your side. You know, the old wisdom is a new pastor, don't change anything for 5 years. For those of us that come into the pastorate during COVID and after COVID, we don't have 5 years. We won't have churches if we don't change anything. But you have to know what gives the congregation meaning. Most pastors don't do that ethnography work. What gives the congregation meaning? That's right. Listen, you might not care anything about the plant that's on the pulpit, but it might be a legacy of someone who was there before you, and their child is a high tither, but they want to see their mother's planted pot on that pulpit, even though it's not good for the look of the online streaming community. So ethnography will teach you what to touch, what to leave alone, so that you can continue to cast the vision.
Yeah, and navigate around. Got
to navigate around it. And the last thing, the third thing that I would say is pace yourself. Pace yourself. You can't change everything at one time. And so be strategic, pick 3 or 5 things that matter. And the things that you're changing are those things that are going to help you disciple and grow the church. Maybe one of those things might be personal preference, but the majority of those changes need to be, how can we go from good to great so that we can be better disciples, which is what we're called to do, and to train our people on how we become a different kind of church. But you got to know your people. Your people have to know you. You've got to build that trust before you can change anything.
So would you say that those nuggets are also part of your defining components of your leadership?
Absolutely.
As you're developing as a pastor, or growing in your, as some people would say, growing in your seasoning as a pastor?
Sure. You know, hospitality is not just a theological principle. It really is a spiritual gift for me. I worked in the hospitality field for 12 years. People like to know their name. They like to be remembered. They like to be seen, and they like to be valued. And so I bring all of that hospitality training into my ministry and also the work that I do at Candler. And I remember when someone says, hey, I have a job interview on Thursday. Pastor's calling you on Thursday. And then guess what? I'm old school. I'm going to call you back on the next Thursday or 2 weeks after. Hey, is there an update so we can do a praise report?
Sure.
But seeing people matter. And even it's the smallest things. And so I'm still a pastor that will give shouts out over the pulpit, right? And you know, as we talk about the marriage of ministry and technology, my live stream is always up on my phone. And so if I see that someone is commenting in the chat, preach pastor, I'll call their name and not miss a beat to say, I'm with you, you know, high five, right? As we continue to just build and merge community. But they've got to see that you love what you do.
And research suggests that people who are connected with the ministry through how people respond in the comments, there is data that shows that there is a connection that they receive that causes them to join the church online or join the church in person.
That's right.
So I've heard testimony from people to say, I joined this church because someone called my name.
That's right. And followed up.
That's
right. I'm a living witness. Yeah. We've got members in Alabama. We've got members in Florida, several members in Florida. And folks watch us, North Carolina, I mean, all over, but they're consistent. And what I'm learning is because they are thanked and they are welcomed, they give consistently every week. Testimony, an older gentleman in his 80s found us on YouTube, started watching us on YouTube every Sunday, began to give, passed away. Left the instruction of who his pastor was. And I was able to meet the family.
Wow. Never
stepped foot in my church.
Amazing.
And left a legacy gift that allowed us to pay off the mortgage.
Legacy giving.
Six-figure legacy gift to help us pay off the mortgage in a year. It matters. It matters. So I would call. I send thank you notes. During our women's and our men's days, I always make sure that we include a virtual member. And so, it matters. People in this day and age, high connectivity matter. One of my mentors says this, that, you know, in the 70s and the 80s, the church took care of the community took care of the church, right? Because we all lived in the same community. Now, if the church doesn't take care of the community, then they will see churches begin to shrivel. And you heard that during COVID, where members are saying, for some churches, we only heard from our pastor when it was time to give. But pastor never called to say, hello, how are you? Right. Those things matter.
Yeah. It's that first-class experience.
First-class experience and high touch. In a season of isolation where people are still reeling from the devastation of COVID and triple pandemic, right, of racism and classism and all of these things that are happening on the meta-narrative, they want to know that somebody will miss me when I'm not there. And those are the type of easy, intentional steps that I believe make world-class and first-class ministries.
Sure. I consider that to be having attended first-class ministry trainings, the Ritz-Carlton experience.
That's right.
And I'm a firm believer that, and I say it all the time, you don't have to be a large ministry to be a first-class ministry.
That's right.
Because we have many large ministries that aren't first-class.
I'm a living witness.
And so the experience,
the
experience of being able to know that people know your name.
That's
and
right.
Say your name. Or when you fly on Delta Airlines.
That's right.
And you arrive to your seat and there's a note.
That's right.
That says, thank you for being a valued
That's right.
member of Sky Miles.
That's right.
Those types of things matter.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
It makes a difference.
It makes, you know what, not only does it make a difference, but it starts to make a dent in how we transform ministry, right? From a me to a we, that all of us are important. It was really funny to me about maybe 6 months ago. I was walking in church on a Sunday morning and I heard a little gentleman from the park, unhoused. He said, where are your contacts today? I said, oh my goodness, what's happening? I've never noticed him before. He was like, I watch you when you don't even know. He said, I just appreciate you. You're always so happy when you come in church. He said, but I noticed you don't have your contacts on today. You have on glasses. And I said, my goodness. And we sparked a conversation. And every Sunday morning at the same time, I go a little early just so we can have, how was your week? You know, how's it going? All of these things. He said, ain't nothing going to happen to you as long as I'm here.
And that will go further than
That's right.
any type of resource.
That's right.
People care.
That's right.
How you make them feel.
That's right. That's right.
They'll forget what you said.
Listen.
They will forget what you did.
That's right.
But like Maya Angelou once said, they will never forget how you made them feel. No
That's
matter
right.
what their circumstance, no matter what they're going through.
That's
even
right.
in an unhoused situation.
That's right.
He's made to feel valued.
That's
like
right.
An important part of that community.
That's right. I'm going to sit right out here until somebody else comes. Okay.
And those will be the people that will protect your church.
Listen, and
call.
we all the time. We had a situation. Gentleman showed up. You know. I think he was a little stalkerish, and the word I got, ain't nothing gonna happen to you on this block. Okay, and I appreciate that. But ministry in 2025 requires us to see, and not just look. We have to see. We have to see who's on our team. You never know. You never know who those persons might be. And so it matters that there is a motif and there is a way of being that is unspoken in churches, that everybody is welcome.
Yeah.
Everybody's welcomed here. And so, at our church, I said, you don't have to join to worship. You don't have to join to serve. And that is how we've been growing, because we don't pressure people to join. Come on. If you want to serve. If you have a gift, come on.
Should be what causes them to join.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So tell me about your work and how you, as a woman in ministry, have navigated the spaces of ministry that have helped you to grow in the capacities of which you serve. You serve as a mentor to many. Many look to you as far as how you carry yourself in ministry, because ministry is, of course, is not always easy.
Sure.
But then there are persons who we receive advice and leadership from. So I want to, from a mentor perspective, what would you consider things to be important for how women should navigate, or some ways in which they can glean from your experience to navigate through ministry?
Yeah. I get that question a lot. And my answer might be a little different from others. I've not had a bad experience in ministry, being a woman in ministry. And that single-handedly goes to the brothers that have called my name, the brothers that have opened doors. Because the truth of the matter is, in many instances, we don't get on stages unless the brothers call our name. And so I want to honor the brothers. I want to honor every male in ministry that called my name. You stay in ministry from the wisdom of the women. So you get in the door because the brothers call your name. You stay in there from the wisdom of the women. I think about Geneva Dorsey, who was in my home church. Say it good every time you say it, right? My grandmother, look like where you're going and act like where you are. It's better to be overdressed than underdressed, right?
Your church sounds like my church.
Yeah, listen, it's all the same, right? Walk slowly, Dr. Hale. Walk slowly through a crowd, right? Talk to everybody that wants to talk to you, right? When you get up there, leave no doubt. That's my mother. Leave no doubt. And so the wisdom of the women and the absolute support and mentorship and the name calling in rooms that I have never been in by the brothers, I believe is a component for success. In the Baptist church, women senior pastors is a new phenomenon. In fact, that's what my doctoral dissertation was on. But there's something happening. There's a shift in the atmosphere, because since 2022, over 30 Black women have been called to pastor major historic Baptist churches, mostly on the Eastern Shoreboard. But we give our nod to our sister, Dr. Jacqueline Thompson, in Oakland, right? And so there's something happening, not just in the Black church, but in the Baptist denomination, that is now saying, we got to do something differently, right? And so as a mentor, I tell young preachers two things. You got to listen twice as much as you speak. There's a different understanding of your job when you're second seat than when you become first seat. But you'll never have a successful first seat if you don't know how to be second seat. If you don't know how to
Navigate
pick
the
up,
second chair.
you have to navigate the second chair. If you are too big for the broom and the mop, then you're too big for the microphone. They're synonymous, right? You have to serve before you can lead. Most young preachers think they know everything. And one of the things that I tell my associates is, you're going to hear my voice when you become pastors. And you're going to say, I understand it better by and by. I can show you some things. I can teach you some things. You can read some things. It's not until you get in the seat that you'll understand why certain decisions are made. And so it's important for young preachers to have pastors, to go to church.
And to listen to pastors.
That's right. And to not imitate, but how to work on your own voice. God doesn't need coward soldiers, but God definitely doesn't need duplicates.
No.
Right?
No.
Because to serve this present age, our calling to fulfill is the call.
There's a style for everyone.
There's a style for everyone. I don't need an 18-year-old preacher looking like he's 90. That doesn't work. That doesn't comport. Because then when the senior pastor assigns you to youth ministry, you've ostracized your peers because
you're modeling someone.
You're modeling someone that they can't relate to, right? And so, and conversely, it's interesting when you see folks that are seasoned, over 50, and they're the youth pastor. That's problematic. Full stop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I hear you.
And so, young preachers have got, and I believe that there has to be an inherent, insatiable desire for excellence. If you're sloppy, if you're showing up late, that's not excellent. If you are never on time with the assignments that folks have asked you, you think that you can wake up on Sunday morning, it's not going to work. Even reading the scripture, if you've not read the scripture all week, it's going to show up on Sunday morning when you're fumbling.
If you don't pray during the week.
If you don't pray during the week, if we ask you to, on any given time, to pray, if you're fumbling, that is an indication that your own private spirituality and devotional life is lacking.
My pastor will say, when you get up to pray, I know if you've been talking to the Lord or not.
That's right. Listen, Daddy Creasy said, you're not fit to talk to people on Sunday if you're not humble enough to talk to God Monday through Saturday. And he's right.
He is right.
He's right. And so
it's not just an academic moment.
Baby, it's how it's right. That's right.
Seminary.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. It's got to be from here. And I think, authentic ministry is what matters too. People are being drawn now to authentic ministry.
Sure.
I would also say in the Black church, people rely on that collective rememory of their childhood. Before people saw a preacher, their first preacher, typically their parents and their grandparents, right? And their daily modeling of what it means to be a Christian, to call on the Lord and get an answer, to brush your teeth and say your prayers.
Yes. Wash dishes
and shout at the same time. Shouting while you're cooking. The Lord has done it again. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so those are things that I don't think we can shy away from. But when I talk to younger folk, preferably under like 25, they remember their grandmother who took them to church. They remember, some seasoned saint that whispered words of wisdom that served as a living testimony about Jesus and the God they serve. And when times get hard for them, when they get, under a rock and between a hard place, they go back to the words of those women or men, and that's what draws them back to church. Pastoring in a college town, I hear that all the time, and it's been beautiful because our church reminds them of home.
And that's the beauty of technology.
That's right.
Is that when I was in college, I couldn't connect with my home church because at that time there was no technology that would allow me to do so.
Sure.
So now we have means of live streaming and connecting people virtually. And I know that you've done quite a bit of work in your ministry at Hill First to help connect people who are online who appreciate the style of worship that is accustomed, that's a part of the tradition, and even the contemporary elements of it as well, and the close-knit aspects of your worship experience. So can you, in pivoting a little bit, speak to your experience in helping to develop a 21st century ministry? Because I know that you are adamant about making sure that excellence is exuded even through kind of navigating the culture of the church
Sure.
to help them to have a quality appearance online
Yeah.
and a quality experience in person. So tell me about what your experience has been like, and then what are some of the things that you've gleaned from your ministry experiences from a technology perspective
Sure.
that you feel are important to how we continue to move forward in ministry.
Yeah, that's a great question. Another tidbit of advice, you don't have all the answers. And so you seek out the professionals and the subject matter experts. And so our technology growth, we certainly want to tip our hat to the Farmer Tech Group for helping us see what we need to know, but also doing it on our scale. You know, many of us watch a lot of the mega churches, and, you know, a lot of folk fall into the trap of trying to replicate that, but that's not your context. And so we've taken what I would believe is a conservative approach to introducing technology, not enhancing. We had to introduce it first, and enhancing it along the way so that it's a sustainable, right? So whatever we buy, we can repurpose it for another opportunity. In terms of our aesthetic, we are the oldest Black Baptist church in North Georgia. We have stained glass windows. We have the original bell that was hung in 1867. Our church still hoists the original bricks, the original wooden floor. And so there are some elements there that matter. And so it would be disingenuous to the historical aspect of our church for me to come in and try to make it contemporary. That's not smart, right? My folks won't. That will be a nail in a coffin. That's unnecessary, right? And so it's the cameras are there, but they're not there, right? We're going to continue devotion,
And that's how it should be.
and that's how it should be. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not. There's not an intrusion of cameras or media. But we do things on the back end outside of worship that sort of enhances the connectivity on Instagram, on YouTube, with posts and what do you call them? YouTube short. You need the subject matter expert on these
YouTube
things,
shorts.
right? Just to get different types. It's mixed media. I will say that it's mixed media approaches to speak to the intergenerations that are in our church. But on Sunday morning is for worship. And so that's been our approach. We've not yet added screens. A lot of that is structural. You know, the church was built 158 years ago, so it's pure concrete. So, you know, it's going to take some extra things other than just, you know, hanging something there. We've done a one step of just getting a switcher, a DSLR camera, you know, 2 monitors, so that enhanced. We started with Switcher Studio on iPad, and it worked. And as we continue to grow, we were able to train our young people and our and I hate when people say that young people are the only people that have to know what technology. I'm looking for an intergenerational media team because it's our church.
And everyone plays a role.
And everyone plays a role in that
how it
part.
unfolds.
Exactly. So we've taken a mixed media approach, but we're taking it slow. The pulpit that I preach from every Sunday, one of the reasons why I am hesitant to change it is because our church was a headquarters from 1957 to 1962 of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Wow. And M.L. King on Sundays at 3 p.m. stood in the same pulpit where I preach, behind that pulpit. Wow. Hosea Williams, Jesse Jackson. So we're known as the Freedom Church. There's a story to it. And to remove that, for me, for a visual aesthetic that mirrors what we see in contemporary churches, I think is a disgrace to the history of our church.
Sure.
And I would also say that sometimes, because of technology, we can send misleading messages about our church, right? Taglines, oh, we're a multicultural church. Not really, right? We're intergenerational church, and you get there and everybody's over 80. That's a lie. That's a marketing lie, right? And so just to honor who we are, there are certain things about what we do so that people know exactly what they're going to get.
To that end, technology there should be a good marriage between technology and authenticity.
That's right.
With excellence. So your ministry should be able to tell its own story to the people who would glean from your ministry, because there is an audience for every ministry.
Every ministry.
And so with that, and because I know you mentioned about having an intergenerational technology or media team, one thing that, even as I write about technology and helping to support pastors, even in a recent work that I've done, talked about technology resistance.
Sure.
And sometimes there is the thought that there's a magic wand
Right.
from a church leadership perspective, pastors, church boards that think that you can buy it once and it's good to go forever.
Yeah.
Or there's always a magic wand and you all figure it out and make it work because we just see this side of it,
Sure.
but don't understand the behind the scenes side of it.
Sure.
And I know that you've been blessed to work and see both sides.
Sure.
So from the vantage point from a pastoral role in technology and those who might be resistant to fully understanding the totality of it, what would be your perspective to help kind of break up the ground for those who have an expectation but don't have a clear understanding?
Sure. Yeah. I would say that's a great question. Is the Bible was technology at one point, from C scrolls to a compiled canon, right? That's technology. And so if systematically, God never changes. God is the same all the time, right? But every day things change. Then technology also has to change, right? Sound is not stagnant. You know, yeah, folks, I set the sound 40 days ago and it's changed. Well, the sound is going to be different when in an empty church and when it's a full church, right?
Or if the pastor's voice is challenged.
That's right.
Compared to when it's full.
That's right. Yeah. If the pollen is in your throat, you're going to sound different. You're going to need some more bottom, you know, to bring you up. And so one of the ways that I instituted it is it's all a tool for discipleship. Everything we do, everything we use should be seen from the vantage point that it is a way in which we can spread the gospel so that people might come to see Jesus and change their life. That is what technology is.
It is.
Period. And that's my explanation, right? Now, there are positive ways and negative ways in which we can engage with technology, but I think that's a teaching tool as well. I'm a mom of a 13-year-old. And if you talk to middle school teachers, they'll tell you technology is going to be the death of this generation. And so I am teaching him how to be responsible and respectful when you're using technology.
Good digital citizenship.
That's digital citizenship. That's right.
Yeah.
You know, if someone is shouting, although it'll be a great, candid shot, you're intruding on their worship, right? So maybe let's not do that, right? And so, you know, as he's learning, as picking up a camera, doing stock photos and, you know, things like that, but capture the moment without being intrusive. And so, you know, even with digital giving, because my church likes to see the pastor put an envelope in the bucket. And so I put an envelope in the bucket on the first Sunday and all the subsequent Sundays. As I say, our platforms, Givelify is my favorite way to give. And I can give in 2 minutes. Pastor has just given. Sure. All of those who've given online, say I've given, whatever, you know, whatever that might be, so that people will know. Because the perception is, it's funny. You see people who give online, they still walk around because they don't want to be excluded,
sure,
right?
Course.
It's like you're wasting an envelope. You know what I mean? And so it's a way for the congregation to see.
Sure.
This is what we're doing.
And the pastor's role, as quiet as it's kept, the pastor is a member of the church's media team.
Absolutely.
They may not realize it, but indirectly and in some cases directly,
that's right,
are members of the media team. And this is how their role plays a pivotal part of how things unfold technologically.
That's right.
The pastor and the church leadership have the capacity to help navigate church culture around technology.
That's right.
So with technology, there is a difference. I know you speak to how being non-intrusive in worship from a technology perspective. So the pastor's role or the church leadership's role is to help navigate and making sure the congregation is informed that there may be some movement.
Right.
We're shifting to be able to capture
that's right,
the worship service this way. Therefore, there may be a person who I know it's sacrilegious to move during certain parts of the worship service. Right. But there may be a slight movement in order to capture a certain moment.
That's right.
So that the person who's at home can have the same feeling and can know the pulse of the worship experience.
That's right.
And so that, I believe, is pivotal for the pastor to understand from a leadership perspective, church leaders from a administrative perspective, and even the congregation from a lay perspective.
That's right.
We're all a part of this together. And
that's right. But that's pedagogical as well. Mm-hmm. It's the pedagogy to say the Spirit is moving and we are yet spirit right? And we're moving to ensure that there's equity in our worship experience. That's pedagogical.
It is.
It's also theological.
It is.
Right?
And so as the Spirit moves, then as
That's
the
right.
media team, we have to also navigate in the movement of the Spirit.
That's right.
In order to help everyone, both in person.
That's right.
I call them the visuals in person and the virtuals online.
That's right.
So they both get the best experience possible, because when your worship service is one faceted where there's one camera, and I know all of us are in different places, but
Sure.
if we make it a practice to just have our worship experience affixed from a frontal perspective,
Right.
then what vantage point does the person who normally comes to church and sits on the left side
That's right.
get when they're at home?
That's right.
So I think that's how the leadership,
Sure.
pastor, administrators help to navigate
Sure.
and to help the culture understand
Sure.
that it's not intended to be a disruption, but it's just helping us to navigate to provide an in-person experience as much as possible for those who are
That's
at home.
right. It's a sacred symphony.
Yes.
It's
I
a
love it.
sacred symphony, right? Just as the pastor and the music team has to be aligned so that the preached word, which happens both in song and in word, the preached word come together. It's the leadership and the technology,
Yes.
which is the moving spirit.
Yes. And so I'm
Right?
going to take a little bit of your quote. So I'm always listening. When you preach, you always say from the membership, the fellowship, the fellowship, and the online viewership,
That's right.
because they need to feel included.
That's right.
And as the pastor is preaching, and as the music is unfolding, all of that plays a role into how we feel both in person and online.
That's right. That's right. It has to be an equitable, welcome experience. Now, different models and modalities, rather, of how that happens, but it's still the same.
Yeah.
It's still the same.
So with that in mind, in terms of technology, kind of leads to how church growth looks like
Sure.
in 2025.
Sure.
And so navigating both a traditional congregation and looking and working to continue to have growth in your membership, what are some strategies as it relates to church growth
Yeah.
and to engender a healthy church? What are some of the things that you've learned and have gleaned
Sure.
from your mentors that you've been able to work
Yeah.
and integrate at Hill
Hill
First?
First. Yeah. One, everybody has a role to play. And so, sometimes in the Baptist church, or not in church period, we only highlight those folks that are super visible. And we very seldom highlight the folk who will come in when they get off their 12-hour shift. If there's a leak in the basement, to make sure that there's no water. And if there's water, they wipe it up and they go home, right? Engaging with people where they are. And so some of my members love an email. A lot of my members love text messages. So there's this flock note. And they get something from the pastor 3 times a week. Just depends. And mostly it's pastor loves you. I'm praying for you. I'm praying God's choicest blessings upon your life. Or, a scripture or something, so that there's a high touch point with the pastor. And that is the one mechanism where whether you like to get text messages or not, you're still included there. And so my virtual members are like, wow, you don't forget, right? I'm old school. I like to write handwritten notes. People love to receive something in the mail.
Handwritten notes.
Handwritten notes. They still matter. If we have given out T-shirts or Christmas ornaments in person, right? I'm going to mail a T-shirt and a Christmas ornament with a handwritten note to my virtual members. And that has kept them engaged. Like, wow, we need to use. We did a women's event, a women's little get together last Saturday, and we gave away fans. So it was where them fans at. And people from all over the country. Oh my goodness, Pastor, you've got to send us a fan. It was a logoed fan. I was like, in my mind, it's just a plain old fan. But for them, it's another way in which they connect with the church that feeds them, that blesses them, the mutual blessing. It's a keepsake. And so that taught me a lesson that people really do want to be connected. And so one, intentional about the modalities of how we connect with people. But I like to ensure that I'm highlighting different people every Sunday. The lady who did the bulletins for 30 years before I got there, we don't do bulletins anymore. I honored her with an award.
Because the bulletin in the church.
Because the bulletin in the church is gold, right? And to say because we don't do it anymore does not mean that we don't appreciate it. So what I do now is, hey, can you tell me what the announcements are? And can you write it up in a note for me and have it in the pulpit so I don't forget? So that she's still engaged. Does that make sense? Sure.
Just like how you honored, I believe, some of the church leaders through the update to the media room.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Name them. Think that they were there every day, that the media room was being updated. We're going to honor you. Another one of our members who's homebound purchased all of the equipment.
Wow.
He purchased all the equipment. And so, well, Pastor, I don't need a thank you. He was a former videographer for years. He's in late 70s. He knew the camera to get. He knew, all of these things.
And that's a connection.
And it's a
based
connection.
on not just what they bring to the church, but even what
That's
they
right.
do outside of church.
That's right.
And that connection to the church, you knowing that and the leaders knowing that and appreciating that.
That's right.
To keep them connected.
Yeah, you got to just stay connected. So it's a small thing. It really is. I don't have any sweeping how-to booklet on how you grow your ministry, but I do know that if we forsake our biggest asset, which are the people, then there will be no ministry. And so it's all of the things that we do to cultivate relationships, to build community, but also to stay connected during the week. Older millennials, we work, 12, 13 hours a day. We like to travel. And so I have a member who is, 43. He's like, Pastor, I'm not coming on Sunday because it's the only day that I'm going to stay at home. But whatever you need will be there. If we do anything on a Saturday or during the week, it's like either I will pay for all of the dinner, I'll pay for all of the devotional books, Pastor. You just tell me what you need. But that's how I'm engaging. And that's still important to the church.
It is very important.
I'm not frying chicken. Okay, I'm not going, what I mean? I'm not doing that, but I will buy the food and DoorDash it to you. And that's my exactly. And that's my contribution. Yeah. So for church anniversary, that's what happened. Our virtual member in Tennessee said, I want to contribute. I won't be able to make it. I know you all are having 2 services. I'm going to place the order at Nuke's and have it DoorDash to the church, and it's there. There really is there are no words to encapsulate how profound that is.
Sure.
Right.
And how, as a part of that ministry, even though they can't connect in person, it makes them feel good.
That's right.
They can still connect and support the
That's
ministry.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I've got another virtual member who likes to send birthday cards. It's like, who is this? That's our virtual member who sent you your card. Or another one of my virtual members, she saw that we gave out the $25 gift certificates to college students. And she not only gives her tithe, but she funds now. She'll send $1,000 a month to say, this is what we're doing with the church.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap things up, and this has been wonderful, and hearing all of the great things that you're doing and how ministry has and continues to evolve in the work that you do. And that leads me to helping through what you do to define and continue to grow the definition of first-class ministry.
Sure.
So in parting words, what would be your words of encouragement or wisdom to those who are doing well and flourishing at a first-class ministry and those who are struggling?
Sure.
What would be your words of wisdom or the takeaway from all that you have experienced in ministry to help someone who might need some support along the way?
Sure. For the church or the leader that's flourishing and for the church leader that's struggling, you have to be a constant reader and you have to continue to grow as the leader. The day that leaders become stagnant is really the pinpoint where the church begins to die and not thrive. And so the leader has to continuously be a learner, right? Leaders are learners. Secondly, you have to build your network of relationships. In our own community, we have everything we need for every church that's open in the name of Nazareth native son can flourish.
Come on.
We have everything we need. And so this idea that if I ask them, they're going to take my stuff. There's enough stuff to be shared so that everybody can thrive. That Acts, when they all came on one accord, they all had what they needed. And so I would encourage both, again, the thriving leader and the struggling leader, reach out, ask questions. If you don't know it, there's someone in your community who knows it, or there's someone in your community that knows somebody call them. We have to lean in on our community because we have everything that it takes. For the struggling leader, I would say you must do an honest assessment of where your church is. There are some churches that are not interested in growing. And then that becomes a discernment between you and God about what you can do to, one, preserve your own health and still be faithful to the call. But to not kill yourself trying to take a church in a direction that the church has said they're not going, right?
And they'll make that clear.
And they will make that very clear and be okay with that. And that does not mean that it won't be done. It just won't be done in this season, right? To the thriving leader, never become lazy or to sit on laurels because ministry is changing every single day. The needs of our people are changing every single day.
And ministry may be ahead of you one day.
And it will catch up. That's right. That's right. And so we have to continually evolve. And I would say to the ministries that are thriving, we have the responsibility to identify a church that's struggling and partner with them any way that relationship opens itself up. But we also have a relationship to give back. If I've had a camera that we no longer use, but we know that this old camera to us will be a blessing to somebody else, then I'm not going to charge you for the camera. I'm going to give you the camera, right? We had 2 pianos, 2 keyboards. I was like, we only need one. Found a church. The iPad that we purchased, you all can now have the iPad. And it was like we had given them $10,000. Right. And so it's the community of how we pool our resources together, how we share information. If you're the subject matter expert, don't hold a prayer breakfast. Hold a come and ask your question. Right. We're not, charging anybody any fee to get in, and give people information. And Dr. Farmer, that's one of the things that why I believe God is blessing your ministry so much is because you are one that models, if I have it, if I know it, I'll share it. If I have it, I'll give it. And that comes from a deep-seated place of wanting the church to thrive. And I believe that that's also a part of your calling card to discipleship, because there are a lot of churches that you have helped that we know whose doors would have closed if it had not been for the introduction to technology. And one who is ordained, one who is a church boy, who knows how church flow. Right? Amen. To be able to introduce it in a way and speak in a language and in a tone of love that they understand for the good of their ministry, but also to the glory of God. And so those are my words. And then seek God's face. Amen. Seek God's face through it all. You have to know when to move, when to stop. And stopping and being still are 2 different things. And listening. That's right. When to say now. And when to say not yet. And God will order your... None of our churches should be exact replicas of each other. We have to know where God has placed us, the people that God has given us. Because I think there's a symbiotic relationship between where we're placed and the people God places us with in the season that we're in.
And being sensitive to the season.
That's right. Got to be sensitive to the season. But yeah, the thriving leader and the struggling leader. Because the truth of the matter is, on any given day, the struggling minister can thrive in an area where the flourishing leader is struggling. And so that is why, again, I harp on that community, because you will never know unless you're in intentional community with others that can help you navigate. And so we thank God for you. We thank God for all that you do.
Thank God for you.
And
God,
you so much. I have not seen, and ear hath not heard the good things that God has in store for you. And I believe your work with technology will help people see and hear differently what they are expecting from God in the now and in the not yet. And so, amen. I'm excited about it.
We are who we are because of each other.
Yes.
Because of our connection. Grateful. I'm grateful to God for this opportunity to connect with you and to see all of the great things that you're doing. We've come a long way.
Long way.
And there is many things to come, and the best is yet to be seen.
Listen, I'm excited to crack this book open and read it and continue to learn.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I mean, even in that process, you've been supportive and helpful and encouraging. And so I want to thank God for you and continue to honor you in the work that you do and supporting ministries and being an encourager, being a supporter. And that means a lot for persons who are working to help others
Sure.
to be their very best selves and to be first class.
First class. Listen, no class or first class.
That's it.
There's no in between.
No in between.
No in between.
And with that being said, thank you for joining us for this episode of the First Class Ministry Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube for this episode and many other rich conversations. And we'll look forward to continuing to be a blessing to you. God bless you. This is Dr. Timothy Farmer, your techno-evangelist. Faith cometh by hearing, and clear, powerful sound is essential to impactful worship. Check out my new book, Beyond the Soundboard, a practical guide to quality church audio for pastors, leaders, and media teams. Whether you're a pastor seeking better sound for sermons, optimizing your sound system, equipping volunteers, or enhancing virtual worship, this book provides the essential tools and insights you need. Order Beyond the Soundboard today on Amazon or at farmertechgroup.com.